There is this deep-rooted belief in general Western culture that success means never failing. Somehow failure is unacceptable, and if we do fail, it means that there's something wrong with me. This is of course absurd. We are very flawed human beings, and failure is as much a part of our journey through life as also failure is a part of that journey to success. What does that mean for us as photographers though? How is failure an integral part of our success, and why is failing actually so important? Welcome to the channel. Thank you for joining me. My name is Seagram Pierce if you're new here. In her book, The Right Kind of Wrong, The Science of Failing Well, Professor Amy Edmondson outlines there are three archetypes of failure. One that we kind of want to be aiming for, a good kind of failure. There's three types of failures. The first kind of failure is called a basic failure. This is something in known territory where a simple error led to that failure. It can be a small failure or an enormous one. You get tomato sauce on your jacket, or a bank employee transfers $900 million instead of $8 million that they were supposed to transfer to a client. Small and large failures, but simple. The second is a complex failure. This is where failure comes from multiple causes, almost like a perfect storm that's brewing. Several things line up and they just all go wrong all around. Look at COVID, for example. A global pandemic broke supply chains. Multiple factors resulted in workers not being able to get to work due to illness, weather, lockdown regulations. Several things came together. The third type is called an intelligent failure, and this is what we're going to talk about today. This is the right kind of wrong. This is where we get new knowledge and where discovery really comes from. You can't experiment without embracing intelligent failure. Professor Edmondson outlines that there are a few criteria for something to be called an intelligent failure. The first criteria was it had to be in new territory, something we lack knowledge in to effectively produce success. The second criteria is that it had to be in pursuit of a goal, whether it's learning a new sport or discovering a new molecule. It has to be something that is goal-orientated. Number 3 is that it has to be hypothesis-driven. It requires that you've done some homework and you're not just randomly stabbing in the dark, attempting with no preparation. Fourthly, trying to keep that failure as small as possible so that it's just enough to learn from, that we don't cause large catastrophic failures from these. So the question is, how can we try have intelligent failures in our craft and in our careers as photographers? I like how Professor Edmondson is able to outline what intelligent failure looks like, because it helps us to identify where we can go looking for it. Our frame can be easier to see this way. We can ask ourselves, is this a new area for me? Perhaps we're trying a new genre of photography out. Let's say, for example, we have a photographer and he's only done sports events and he's wanting to branch out into new territory, say baby photos. At that point, this photographer lacks knowledge in this genre to confidently produce success, right? By comparison to a specialist in the field. I mean, this guy's never worked with a baby before in his life. This is good, because we now have our garden patch to start preparing. So let's stick with our sports photographer in this exercise as we go through the statements of Edmondson on what intelligent failure is. So number 2, our photographer changing genres, that's a pursuit of a goal. It is a clear objective of what our photographer wants to learn how to do. Number 3, how do we make this hypothesis driven? Well, that photographer may try to do some research on how to pose babies and newborns in a way that's safe but also visually appealing. Babies are sacks of potatoes at this stage. And say they've only used hard sunlight as their light source, this photographer may want to learn about some indoor lighting techniques. Essentially, the question is, what things can I hypothesize I'll need to know and understand in the future in order to achieve success? Lastly, intelligent failure, keeping it as small as possible, that's an easy one. A photographer can spend some time prior to an actual shoot you actually have to do and try the lighting scenarios. Try it on a small subject where you get an idea of what works and what doesn't. You want to think like a scientist when it comes to this. Scientists, they've not only trained themselves to tolerate failure, but they also really welcome the lessons that each failure brings. Each intelligent failure that we can embrace fully only helps us to see more clearly at what is needed in order to achieve success. It's funny how, as humans, one of the things that often holds us back from taking risks and from experimenting is that we mistakenly think that stakes are too high. We think that if we get this wrong, it will be awful. But in reality, if we get this wrong, it's just wrong. Surely it may feel a little frustrating, granted, and we may be disappointed to a degree, yes, but it's not awful. It's not the end of the world. We've just given ourselves new knowledge. Failure plays such a crucial role in our growth and our development. I threw this question out to photographers all over, and they had some really interesting things to say about how the value of failure has helped them in their photography. The first one that came out, which was interesting, is it's literally impossible to learn without mistakes. Photography as an art involves so much experimentation in various techniques, from composition, lighting, style, and people skills. Failure allows us as photographers to learn and understand what doesn't work and refine better. Like a child learning to walk, we want to make sure we're getting up after each mistake. That's quite crucial. The second one that came out was innovation and creativity. Failure often leads us to a more innovative way of thinking, because trying a new approach, angle, or editing style may result in failure initially, but it also can lead us to discover completely new perspectives or creative solutions that we wouldn't have even gone down if we had not explored otherwise. If we hadn't had that failure initially, we wouldn't have been forced to try different things. The third one that was brought up was an important one, and that's developing resilience. Photography, like any art form, requires resilience in the face of setbacks. These failed attempts help us to build that resilience, perseverance, and ability to bounce back from these disappointments. The fourth idea that was brought out was breaking our boundaries. Embracing failure encourages the breaking past the boundaries we thought we had before. It helps us to go, well, I've never tried this avenue before, let's see what happens. This is often quite an exciting stage to be in, because this is where we'll often surprise ourselves with what we'll find in this process. The fifth point that came out was understanding personal style, because we need failure to understand our unique style and voice. By our experimenting and encountering failures, we discover what really resonates with us artistically. This then leads us on how we develop our distinctive visual signature, and this is so important for us as photographers. The sixth point that came out was adapting to changing circumstances. Photography and your career in it will be so dynamic, and adapting to unforeseen circumstances and challenges is vital. Failure teaches us to adapt quickly, think on our feet, and make the most of unexpected situations, which is, again, another incredible tool set to have in our belt. It can also apply to how we choose our genre, our niche, and when it comes time to maybe pivot into something new because what we've been doing isn't working. I often find it so good to remind ourselves of the true rational stakes of a situation. Low stakes might be that someone has a laugh at our expense or even disagrees with us. Who cares? It shouldn't be such a strong devoiding emotion that it stops us from trying. As my grandmother would tell me, nothing ventured, nothing gained. That rings in my head all the time. It's so natural for us as humans to want to avoid failure. But when we avoid it like it could harm us in some way, we also avoid the amazing feeling of discovery and accomplishment that comes on the other side of that. We'll never feel success in any endeavor worth trying unless we're willing to experiment, try new things. Don't forget that we want to think like a scientist. Know that many things that we try will yield failures. Anticipate it. Take those failures, embrace that new knowledge that you've just gotten from that, and go intelligently fail some more. This is the space where incredible personal advances and development live. So, Go be brave enough to suck at something new and fail at it. If you've enjoyed this episode, hit like and subscribe, and also check out some of these videos on how you can get better at your photography in your business. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.